Have you ever walked into a room, and the moment you step in, everything changes? Emma Walker thought to herself as she stared at the scene in front of her. The room was filled with the soft murmur of excited guests, all eagerly awaiting the moment John Walker, her ex-husband, would finally marry the woman of his dreams. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, but then she walked in. The doors opened and there he was, John, standing at the altar, a look of shock spreading across his face as he locked eyes with her. Emma could feel the tension in the air. It was as if time had stopped. He froze. His smile faded. His body stiffened. The crowd, oblivious to what was unfolding, continued to chatter, unaware of the silent drama playing out between the two of them. For Emma, it was a moment filled with questions. Why did John stop everything the moment he saw her? Was it regret? Was it something deeper, something that neither of them had ever spoken about since their bitter divorce? Emma had spent the last few years building a new life for herself, moving on from the man she thought she knew. But standing there in the same room as him again, a flood of memories came rushing back. The love, the fights, the misunderstandings, and the final crushing silence when their marriage had ended. She never expected this, not in a million years. John had asked for this moment. He'd planned it all. The perfect wedding, the perfect bride, the perfect future. But the second he laid eyes on Emma, everything came crashing down. Could it be that the past still held him captive? Could he still feel something for her? Or was this just the shock of seeing someone who had once meant so much to him, now standing in front of him, a symbol of everything lost? Emma's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the situation. She had been the one to walk away first, to make the decision that would ultimately free them both. And yet, here she was, witnessing the unraveling of John's carefully constructed life. It was hard to ignore the confusion that danced across his features. The way his hands shook, the way his lips parted, as if trying to find the right words, the right excuse to explain. What was happening? The moment was heavy with unspoken words, but what did it all mean? Did John truly want to stop his own wedding because of Emma's presence? Or was there something deeper at play? She couldn't help but wonder if this was some kind of twisted fate, a cruel twist of irony, that their paths had crossed again in this way. Emma watched him struggle with his emotions, trying to decide whether to continue with the wedding or confront the past. She had no idea what he was thinking, but she knew one thing for sure. The man she once loved was no longer the same person. The years had changed him. And as for Emma, she had moved on. Or at least, that's what she kept telling herself. But here now, in the midst of all this chaos, those old feelings began to resurface. The question lingered in her mind. Why did John try to stop his own wedding the moment he saw her? Was it out of love, regret, or something else entirely? The answers were buried deep inside. And as the room waited in anticipation for what would come next, Emma knew that her life, her future, was about to take a turn she never saw coming. As Emma stood there, watching John's expression shift between disbelief and hesitation, the world around her seemed to blur. The lavish decorations, the flowers, the music playing softly in the background, all of it seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the two of them in that moment. Her mind raced as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Was this some kind of sick joke? Did John have a change of heart? Or was this just a fleeting reaction to seeing her after so many years? The last time they had spoken was when they had signed the divorce papers, the words exchanged cold and final. There had been no second chances, no going back. Yet, here she was, in the very place she had never imagined returning to. Standing at the altar, watching the man she once loved, the man who had betrayed her trust, the man who had made her walk away from their broken marriage, now unable to continue with the life he had so carefully planned. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what to feel. Was it anger? Relief? Or perhaps deep down it was something much more complicated, something she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. She had told herself she was over John, that she was stronger now. But standing here, facing him, seeing the way his hands trembled, she realized that the closure she had sought all these years had never truly come. It had just been a story she had told herself to move on. The silence between them was deafening. Guests shuffled uncomfortably in their seats, whispering among themselves, clearly unaware of the storm that was unfolding right before them. Emma knew that this was no accident. This wasn't some random coincidence. John had planned this day, and yet the second he saw her, everything seemed to fall apart. She wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, to ask him why he was doing this to her, to himself, to the woman waiting for him at the altar. But she stayed silent. She wasn't sure what she wanted from him anymore. She wasn't even sure if she wanted an answer. The memories of their past life together flooded her mind. The long nights, the dreams they had shared. The quiet moments when they thought they had everything figured out. But then, just as quickly as those memories came, they were replaced by the reality of their separation. The broken promises. The lies. The feeling of being trapped in a marriage that had long since stopped being a partnership. She remembered the day she packed her bags and left. The way John had begged her to stay. The way he had promised to change, but it had been too late. She had already made up her mind. Emma had left for her own sanity, her own well-being. And in the years that followed, she had built a life for herself. A new life that didn't include John. But standing here in this moment, all of that felt like it could be taken away in an instant. She wasn't sure if she was ready for that. She wasn't sure if she wanted to open that door again. Emma's eyes flickered to the woman standing beside John, the woman who was supposed to be his bride. Her presence felt like a cruel reminder of everything Emma had lost, but also everything she had gained. This woman had no idea what was happening, no idea that the man she was about to marry was still haunted by the past. It wasn't fair. Emma knew it wasn't. But life wasn't fair. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her, suffocating her with each passing second. The longer John stood there, frozen, the more Emma realized that this moment wasn't just about him. It was about her too. It was about confronting the ghosts of their past, and deciding whether to let them go or hold on to them forever. The room was filled with expectation, but all Emma could focus on was the man in front of her. The man who had once promised her the world, but had left her with nothing. The man who had now stood motionless, unsure of what to do next. Emma took a deep breath. This wasn't her fight anymore. It wasn't her story to rewrite. She had walked away from that life a long time ago. But standing there, in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, it was time to let go. To move forward. To let John make his own decisions. Whether he stayed with his bride or walked away, that was his choice now. She had made hers long ago. But somehow, in the quiet of the room, as the tension hung thick in the air, Emma knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she stood there, watching John frozen in place, his eyes locked on hers as if he had seen a ghost. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, and for a brief moment, Emma wondered if she had made a mistake coming here today. The emotions swirling inside her were overwhelming. She wasn't sure if she wanted to comfort John or scream at him, demand an explanation for this uninvited chaos. The man who once claimed he would always love her, the man who had broken her heart more times than she could count, was standing before her, a shadow of the person he once was. But in this moment, she was no longer the woman who would wait for his words or beg for his affection. No, today was different. Emma had already moved on. She had found peace in her own life despite everything. Or so she thought. As the minutes ticked by in agonizing silence, John finally took a step toward her. His eyes, once full of confidence, now looked vulnerable, as though he were searching for the right words to say, but the words never came. Instead, he took another step and stopped, his gaze never leaving hers. Emma's mind raced. What did he want from her? Did he want forgiveness? Did he want to erase all the hurt and betrayal from their past, as if time could be turned back? But Emma wasn't the same person she was when they first met. She had changed. She had healed. And she no longer needed John to complete her. For years, Emma had carried the weight of their broken marriage. She had wondered what had gone wrong, what she could have done differently. But now, as she stood in this room looking at John, she realized that she didn't need those answers anymore. She had spent far too long questioning herself, wondering if she had been the cause of their failed marriage. But it wasn't just her fault. It had been both of them. The mistakes, the misunderstandings, the lies. It had been a combination of everything that had led them to this point. And she had finally accepted that. She didn't need to relive those memories anymore. Emma's eyes shifted toward the woman standing at the altar, her bridal dress shimmering under the soft light. The woman looked confused, glancing between John and Emma, unsure of what was happening. Emma felt a pang of sympathy for her. She had no idea what was unfolding right in front of her. This wasn't just about John's indecision or regret. It was about all the years of unresolved pain, all the unspoken words that had never been said between Emma and John. It was about Emma finally letting go. The woman standing there had no history with John. She was just a chapter in his life the way Emma had once been. And yet, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of loss as she watched John struggle. It wasn't the loss of their marriage. It was the loss of the person she thought she knew. It was the realization that she had once loved a man who no longer existed. John's eyes moved between Emma and the woman at the altar, his internal battle playing out in real time. Emma's heart ached for him, but she also felt a sense of finality. This was his moment, his decision, and it wasn't her responsibility to make it for him. Emma had already made her decision years ago. She had chosen herself. The path that had led her here today wasn't easy, but it had been worth it. She had built a new life, one filled with purpose, one that no longer revolved around John or their shattered past. As the seconds passed, the tension in the room grew unbearable. Finally, John opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Emma raised her hand slightly, a gesture that stopped him in his tracks. "John, it's okay," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You don't need to explain anything to me. I don't need to hear it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of everything they had been through. And just like that, Emma realized that this was the moment of closure she had needed all along. Not from John, not from their past, but from herself. She had let go. She had moved on. And no matter what John decided, she would be okay. This was no longer her fight. It was his. Emma took a deep breath and turned away, ready to leave the past behind her once and for all. Emma took one last look at John standing there, his face a mixture of guilt and confusion, and then without a word, she turned and began to walk away. It was a simple motion, but to her, it felt like the most significant step she had taken in years. As she walked, the sound of her heels echoed through the room, the noise loud in the silence that had fallen over the guests. Her mind was a whirlwind, but there was one thing she knew for certain. She had finally let go. It wasn't about forgiveness or about giving John another chance. It wasn't even about the life they could have had. It was about her own freedom, her own peace. The woman at the altar, the one who had been left standing in the middle of this chaos, caught Emma's eye as she walked by. Emma felt a pang of empathy for her. She was just an innocent bystander in all of this. She didn't deserve to be a part of this drama, and Emma hated that she was witnessing it. But there was nothing she could do. This wasn't her story to rewrite anymore. The door to the room loomed ahead of her, and as she reached for the handle, she hesitated for a moment. There had been so many times in the past when she had questioned herself, when she had wondered if she had done the right thing by leaving John. But now, standing in the hallway, with the weight of years of pain and healing behind her, Emma realized that the decision had been the right one. She had moved on. She had built a life for herself, one that was no longer defined by the man she once loved. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of clarity. She had left behind the broken marriage, the heartbreak, the lies. She had left behind everything that had kept her from living fully. Emma could feel the cool air from the hallway against her skin, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the room she had just left. The air felt fresh, free, and she breathed it in, grateful for the space she had found for herself. She had spent so many years trapped in the past, held back by the ghosts of her former life. But now those ghosts were gone. She had set herself free. As she stepped out into the quiet of the hallway, Emma heard the sound of footsteps behind her. She knew it was John. She didn't have to turn around to know. The energy in the room had shifted the moment she walked out. John was following her. She had expected it, but she hadn't expected how it would feel. His footsteps were tentative, unsure, like he was afraid to disturb the silence she had just created. She didn't stop walking, though. She didn't need to. This was her moment, her time to reclaim what she had lost. She heard his voice then, soft, almost a whisper. "Emma." She didn't respond immediately. She didn't need to. She kept walking, her steps steady, her head held high. The past had taught her that some things were better left unsaid. Some wounds were better left unhealed. But for once, Emma didn't feel the urge to look back. She didn't feel the need to revisit the pain, the arguments, or the things they had left unresolved. She was done with all of that. John was still there behind her, but she didn't turn. She didn't have to. She knew this was the end of that chapter, and she was ready to move on. She could hear his footsteps stop, but she didn't look back. She didn't want to see the look on his face, the regret, or the sadness. She had seen it all before too many times. Instead, she focused on the sound of her own steps, the rhythm of her walk, the steady pace that had carried her through all the years of pain. She was stronger now. She was free. As she reached the exit, she paused for a brief moment, the door just a few inches from her. She could still hear John's footsteps in the distance, still feel his presence behind her. But she knew she didn't need him to follow her. She had walked this path alone for a long time, and now she was ready to continue it on her own. Emma opened the door and stepped outside, into the bright light of the world waiting for her. The door closed softly behind her, and she didn't look back. This was her new beginning. As Emma stepped out into the bright daylight, the warmth of the sun kissed her skin, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. The noise from inside the building, the whispers of the guests, the tension of the room, none of it followed her. It was as if she had crossed an invisible line, leaving everything behind. She had always been the one to carry the burden of their past. She had been the one to suffer in silence, questioning if she had made the right decision by walking away. But now, standing outside, Emma realized that walking away was the only choice she had ever needed. She stood there for a moment, letting the breeze ruffle her hair, feeling the air fill her lungs with each breath she took. She had spent so many years running from her emotions, burying her pain beneath layers of work and distractions. But now, for the first time, she could see clearly. There was no need to look back. There was nothing for her in the past anymore. She had moved forward. She had healed. Emma glanced around, taking in her surroundings. The world outside was vibrant and full of life. It was strange in a way. For so long, she had felt trapped, bound to a relationship that had never allowed her to grow. But now, as she looked at the world before her, she saw endless possibilities. The future was wide open, and she was finally ready to embrace it. She thought about the life she had built since leaving John. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, moments when she questioned if she was truly capable of moving on, of building a life without him. But she had done it. She had found new passions, new connections, and a renewed sense of purpose. She had found peace in the simple things: long walks, late-night talks with friends, and quiet moments alone. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was hers. And that was enough. Emma turned to look at the road ahead of her, her footsteps light and purposeful as she began to walk away from the place that had once been her prison. She had spent so many years trying to make sense of her relationship with John, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. But now she realized that no amount of thinking or analyzing could change what had happened. The past was the past. What mattered now was the present, and the future that lay ahead. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, interrupting her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw a message from a close friend, someone who had been there for her through everything. The message read, "Are you okay? We should meet up soon. I miss you." A small smile tugged at Emma's lips. It had been a while since she had allowed herself to fully enjoy the company of others, to be present without the shadow of her past hanging over her. She quickly typed a reply. "I'm good. Let's meet soon." As she hit send, Emma felt a sense of contentment settle over her. It was strange, this feeling of peace, this quiet assurance that everything would be all right. For so long, she had believed that she needed someone to complete her, that she needed John to be happy. But now she knew that happiness came from within. It was something she had found on her own, and no one could take it from her. The road stretched ahead, and Emma felt ready for whatever came next. She had faced her past, and now she was ready to build her future. She could hear the faint sound of a car engine in the distance, but it didn't matter. She wasn't looking for a ride. She wasn't waiting for anyone to catch up with her. She was finally walking her own path, one step at a time. As she walked further away from the wedding venue, Emma felt a sense of liberation. It wasn't just from John or from the past. It was from all the things that had held her back: fear, doubt, regret. She had shed them all. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. There was a new chapter waiting for her, and she was ready to turn the page. Emma walked along the quiet street, her steps light and steady. She had left the chaos of the wedding behind, but her mind still buzzed with the echoes of what had just transpired. As the minutes passed, the reality of what she had done began to settle in. She had made a decision. It hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. Walking away from John, from their past, was the only way forward. She had spent so many years tangled in the webs of their broken relationship, trying to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. But now, as she walked alone, she could feel the weight of that chapter lifting off her shoulders. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt the space to breathe, to be herself. She wasn't defined by her past anymore. The street was empty, the silence surrounding her almost peaceful. She had been so used to the noise, the endless questions, the assumptions, the judgments. But now there was only the quiet hum of the world moving on without her. She smiled to herself. It was strange how something so simple could feel so freeing. Emma's phone buzzed again, pulling her from her thoughts. It was another message from her friend. "Let's grab coffee tomorrow. I miss you and I think you need a good friend right now." Emma felt a warmth spread through her. It had been a while since she had allowed herself to lean on others, to let someone in without the fear of being let down. But now she knew it was time. She replied with a simple, "Yes. Coffee tomorrow sounds perfect." As she hit send, Emma felt a sense of calm wash over her. For so long she had tried to go through life alone, convinced that she didn't need anyone. But now she realized that having people in her life didn't make her weak. It made her stronger. There was nothing wrong with letting others care for her, just as she had always cared for them. She didn't need to do everything on her own. And for once that felt okay. The sun was beginning to set, casting a soft golden light across the street. Emma stopped walking for a moment, taking in the view. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, the colors swirling together in a beautiful, peaceful dance. It was a reminder that, even after the darkest days, there was always something beautiful waiting to emerge. The thought of John crossed her mind again, but this time it didn't hurt. She had given him so much of herself, but now she understood that she had to give that love to herself. She had spent years putting his needs before hers, trying to fix the pieces of their shattered relationship, but it was never enough. No matter how much she gave, it was never enough. And now she knew that the only person who could make her whole was herself. The future felt wide open, full of possibilities. Emma had no idea what lay ahead, but for the first time she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. Ready to embrace the life she had been too afraid to live before. There would be challenges, of course. There always were. But Emma was no longer the person who would shrink in the face of difficulty. She had faced her past, and she had emerged stronger for it. The world was hers to explore, and she was ready to take it all on. As the night settled in, Emma found herself at a small park. She sat on a bench, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the sky. It was quiet, peaceful, just like the feeling that was settling deep inside her heart. For so long, Emma had felt like she was waiting for something outside of herself to change. She had waited for John to come back, for things to somehow go back to the way they were. But now she understood that change had to come from within. It wasn't about waiting for someone else to fix things. It was about taking control of her own life. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the cool night air against her skin. She could hear the faint rustling of leaves in the trees, the gentle breeze sweeping through the park. It was the sound of peace, the sound of freedom. And Emma smiled, knowing that she had finally found her way home. Emma woke up to the soft rays of sunlight filtering through the blinds. It was a new day, but it felt like the first day of the rest of her life. She stretched, feeling the muscles in her back loosen after a peaceful night's sleep. She had always been a morning person, but today, there was a different kind of energy coursing through her. It wasn't the kind of energy she used to feel when she was trying to avoid something or someone. It was the kind of energy that came with self-assurance, with knowing that she was exactly where she needed to be. She sat up in bed and let her thoughts drift back to the events of the previous day. The wedding, John's stunned face, and the weight of the past that she had left behind. All of it felt surreal now. But as she reflected, she realized that she wasn't running from anything anymore. For the first time in years she felt free. She had made the decision to leave the past in the past, and it was a decision that had brought her peace. No longer did she need to answer the questions that had plagued her for so long. What if things had been different? What if they had tried harder? What if John had changed? She didn't need those answers anymore. They didn't matter. She had moved on. Emma swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood up, taking a deep breath. She had a full day ahead of her. Coffee with her friend, time to relax, and maybe even some reflection on where she wanted to go next in her life. She had so many possibilities now, and for the first time she wasn't afraid to embrace them. She stepped into the shower, letting the warm water wash away the remnants of yesterday's emotions. Felt cleansing not just physically but emotionally. As the water poured over her, she realized that she had come a long way. The person who had walked out of that wedding the day before was not the same person who had entered it. That woman was uncertain, afraid of the unknown, still clinging to the idea that she needed something from her past to feel complete. But now Emma knew that she was enough. She didn't need validation from anyone else, especially not from John. She had everything she needed inside her. When she finished getting dressed, she took a moment to stand in front of the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman who had stared back at her in the past. That woman had been full of self-doubt, full of questions about whether she was worthy of love and happiness. But the woman in the mirror now was different. She was confident. She was strong. And most importantly, she was at peace. Emma smiled at her reflection. She knew it was time to stop looking for something outside of herself to make her feel complete. She had everything she needed right here. She grabbed her phone, sent a quick message to her friend confirming their coffee date, and then stepped out the door, ready to face the world. The city outside felt different today too. The streets seemed brighter, more alive. As she walked down the sidewalk, she felt a sense of calm, a quiet confidence in the way her feet moved, the way her heart beat steadily in her chest. It was as though the weight of the world had been lifted from her, and she could now see the beauty in the world around her. She passed a small park on her way, and for a moment she stopped to take in the scene. The trees were lush and green, the air smelled fresh, and the distant hum of the city felt like a comforting backdrop to her thoughts. She had spent so many years avoiding moments like these, moments of stillness. But now she welcomed them. She welcomed the peace. Emma continued walking, feeling the sunshine on her face, and her thoughts turned to her future. There were so many paths ahead of her, and she wasn't sure which one she would take, but she didn't need to have all the answers right now. She didn't need to rush into anything. She was content, and that was enough. As she arrived at the coffee shop to meet her friend, Emma took one last deep breath, soaking in the newness of the day. She was no longer defined by her past. She was not the woman she had been in that wedding hall, and she wasn't the woman she had been in her marriage. She was something new. She was herself, and that was all she had ever needed to be. The morning after Emma met her friend for coffee, she woke up with a sense of anticipation. It was a new week, and it felt like the start of something fresh, something exciting. Her conversation with her friend had been long and full of laughter, and it had been the kind of conversation that reminded Emma of the value of true connection. She realized, sitting there in the warmth of the cafe, that she had missed moments like that. Moments where the conversation flowed freely, where the weight of her past didn't hang over every word. She had spent so many years buried in her own thoughts, in the broken pieces of her life with John, that she had forgotten what it felt like to truly be present. But now she was reclaiming that. She was rediscovering who she was outside of the context of her past, outside of the roles she had played in her previous life. It wasn't just about moving on. It was about creating something new for herself, something that was uniquely hers. That evening after the coffee, Emma took a walk. She had no destination in mind, just the desire to be out in the world, to feel the rhythm of life moving around her. The city was bustling as usual, but she didn't feel overwhelmed. She felt a part of it in a way she hadn't before. The sun was beginning to set, casting an orange glow across the horizon, and Emma couldn't help but stop for a moment to take it in. She found herself smiling, not because of anything specific, but because she realized she was starting to appreciate the small moments again. The things she had once overlooked, the feel of the cool evening air, the sound of distant laughter, the hum of cars passing by now seemed full of life. It wasn't that she hadn't noticed them before, but in the past they had been drowned out by the noise of her own mind, by the constant rehashing of what had gone wrong. But now there was clarity. She didn't need to analyze every moment or seek out deeper meanings. She could just experience them, and that felt powerful. As she continued to walk, Emma thought about the future. She still didn't know exactly what she wanted, but that was okay. She didn't need to have all the answers right now. She had spent too much time waiting for everything to fall into place, for some perfect moment when she would finally have everything figured out. But she had learned that life didn't work that way. It was about taking things one step at a time, about trusting herself and trusting the journey, even when it didn't make sense. She didn't need to rush into anything. She had spent enough of her life running from one thing to the next, hoping for a quick fix, a simple answer. But now, Emma was ready to take things at her own pace. She didn't need a man, a relationship, or anyone else to define her happiness. She had already found that within herself. Her life was her own to shape, and that was empowering. She passed by a small bookstore on her walk, its windows lined with colorful books. Without thinking, she stepped inside. The smell of paper and ink filled the air, and for a moment, she felt like she had stepped into a different world. She wandered through the aisles, running her fingers along the spines of the books. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, but as she walked, she found herself drawn to a section of travel books. Emma had always dreamed of seeing the world, of experiencing new places, of stepping outside of her comfort zone. She had put those dreams on hold for so long, convinced that she needed to stay grounded, that she needed to have everything figured out before she could take any risks. But now she realized that the only thing holding her back was herself. She could go anywhere. She could be anyone. She pulled a book from the shelf and flipped through it, her heart racing with excitement. The world was waiting for her, and she was ready to meet it. Head on. She didn't need to wait for permission or for the perfect moment. She could create her own adventure. With the book in hand, Emma left the store, a sense of anticipation filling her chest. She was ready to step into the unknown. She was ready to explore the world, to embrace new experiences, and to continue the journey of self-discovery that she had only just begun. She didn't have all the answers, but she didn't need them. She had everything she needed within her, and that was enough. The future was hers to create, and Emma was ready to make it her own. Emma woke up with a feeling of purpose that morning, the kind of quiet assurance that only comes when you finally embrace the truth of where you are and where you're headed. The day was already unfolding in front of her, and she could feel it in her bones. Today was going to be different. As the sun streamed through the window, casting a warm golden light over her room, Emma stretched and took a deep breath. She felt light. She felt free. The weight of her past, the lingering doubts, the fears that had once held her back, all seemed like distant memories now. They no longer had any power over her. The decision to move forward, to take control of her life, was now something that she could not only understand but truly feel. She had made peace with everything that had happened, and in doing so she had unlocked a new chapter. Emma had been through a lot, and now in the quiet of her apartment, she realized just how far she had come. The last few years had been a process of rediscovery, a journey of rebuilding herself after everything had crumbled. And now, as she stepped into the new day, she knew that she was standing on the edge of something new. She wasn't sure exactly what it would look like, but she was ready to find out. She had a world of opportunities in front of her, and this time, she wasn't going to let fear or uncertainty dictate her choices. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked outside. The city was alive, buzzing with the usual energy of a weekday morning. There was something beautiful about it, something inspiring. People were going about their business, each of them, living their own story just like she was now. For the first time in a long time, Emma didn't feel disconnected from the world around her. She felt like she was a part of it, like she was ready to write her own story in the midst of everything. She smiled to herself as she gathered her things for the day. Today she would do something new, something for herself. She wasn't sure what exactly, but that was the point. The thrill of not knowing what the next step would be was no longer something to fear. It was something to embrace. The first step was simply getting out of the door and stepping into the unknown. She had no agenda, no checklist, no destination in mind. It was all about being present in the moment, about doing something that felt right and letting it unfold naturally. Emma left her apartment, and as she walked down the street, the familiar sights of the city felt different now. They felt full of promise. She didn't need the approval of anyone else. She didn't need to compare herself to anyone. She had stopped seeking validation from the outside world, and in return the world began to feel more expansive, more open. The possibilities were endless. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see a message from her friend. "How about dinner tonight? I've been thinking about you and I'd love to catch up." Emma smiled. She had found herself again, and in doing so she had reconnected with the people who mattered most to her. This was what it felt like to be whole again. She quickly typed a response. "Dinner sounds perfect. I'm looking forward to it." As she put her phone back in her pocket, she realized that she wasn't just walking through the streets of the city. She was walking through life with a new sense of purpose. A purpose that didn't rely on anything external. A purpose that came from within. She felt ready to take on the world one small step at a time. With every step, Emma felt lighter. She didn't know what the future would hold, but she knew she was more than capable of facing whatever came her way. She had faced the hardest parts of her life already, and now it was her time to enjoy the journey. The day wasn't over yet, and already, she could feel the excitement of the new beginning pulsing through her. She was no longer bound by the past. She was free, and that freedom was the greatest gift she could give herself. No matter where her path led, she would walk it with confidence, with grace, and with the understanding that she was enough just as she was.